I know.
Okay.
I know.
I don't see 100 on the calendar, by the way, but whatever.
Is S100 not on the calendar? It's not on notice?
Okay, I'm looking at notice calendar.
Okay, so then, well, we'll be prepared for tomorrow. Otherwise,
Look at the back, further down on the calendar. Sometimes there's a notice with further proposal of amendment. Sometimes they seem to have the house.
I don't,
Okay,
all right.
let us, we have a short amount of time, sadly.
Okay.
Let us turn to Tanya's amendment, and Michelle we have a technical amendment as well.
Okay.
So, right, Michelle?
Yes.
We have a very short technical amendment. So we need to discuss, we need to go live. So welcome
We are
everybody.
live, yeah.
We're here back at Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. It is Thursday, the 11th of May, and we are welcoming Senator Vyhovsky to talk about her amendment to the cannabis bill, H270, our housekeeping bill on cannabis, on the retail market and cannabis. And we have a technical amendment, and we have Tanya's, I think, slightly more substantive amendment.
Slightly more substantive, yes.
Okay,
For the
good.
record, Senator Tanya Vyhovsky from Chittenden Central. When I came in here, I don't know, it was probably only a couple of weeks ago, but it feels like it might have been a year ago, with the cannabis bill that I had put forward. I had let you know that sort of the most important part for me was the social equity funding. And I know that money was put into the business development fund to sort of bridge us to a point where we've identified long-term funding mechanisms. And that brings us to my amendment, which asks the racial disparities in the criminal and juvenile justice system advisory panel, or the RDAP, which is an existing group, to collaborate with local and national stakeholders to determine in Vermont who has been disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition, so that we have better information and better data to inform the decision on how we fund both the business development fund and community reinvestment. It asks them to provide recommendations on how to administer and fund the Cannabis Business Development Fund, and to administer reinvestment in individuals and communities that have been disproportionately harmed by the criminalization of cannabis. It asks them to do that by January 15th of 2024, so that we're ready next year to do the more substantive work of permanently funding that with actual data behind us. Because what I heard is that we have a lot of national data, but we don't really have good Vermont data. So this asks the RDAP to provide that for us.
What if it comes back and says college students?
Well, then we've got the information to.
So, thank you.
No, the only question I had was does this panel already exist?
Yeah,
It does.
That's great. That makes it a lot easier.
It's run by your
Yeah.
constituent, Eitan.
Oh,
Isn't it
that's
chaired by
Eitan.
Eitan?
It is
Okay.
chaired by
Oh, that's
Eitan.
great.
And I've talked,
Cool.
and I've been in contact with them, and
so-
they are
They
happy
want
to do this.
Yes.
Yes.
So
That
this
was
is
the
my
only
first
question
question. Have you talked to Eitan?
Yes, and they're happy to do this.
Perfect.
Do they feel they are able to do it? Because in all honesty, this is harm that's gone back over 100 years. So, I mean, it's not like this is harm of college kids. This is maybe harm that has happened for a long time, because cannabis has been with us for a long time, and the prejudice and stigma about it has impact on communities for a long time. So Eitan feels they can actually do this work.
They do.
That's good, because we are going to need more data for us to have this conversation next year.
Before I came in, I made sure we had connected with
Good.
Eitan to make sure that we weren't tasking them to do something that they were like, I don't want anything to do with that.
Okay.
Right, and it fits their mission,
Mhm.
and they will likely have already established sources of information, so it just.
That is what
it'll
they said, is we are
complement what they
mired
do.
in data. I think we can do this. And I've spoken to the Cannabis Control Board, and they also agree that this is a better fit than asking the Cannabis Control Board to do it.
Oh,
Oh,
and
good.
the Cannabis Control Board doesn't have the time.
Oh, there's also that. When I spoke to Pepper and I said, I know you've heard I have an amendment, we're gonna ask the RDEP, he went, hope with this. Thank goodness you're not asking us to do it.
Great,
So,
good. Well, so a problem solved in a number of ways, and important data for us to have as we go forward in our conversation about cannabis. And any other thoughts? Keisha, you have any thoughts? Ann, Wendy?
Well,
Okay.
first
No,
of
I'm
all,
good.
just Baby Bjorn. I don't want to be a commercial for Baby Bjorn bouncers, but that just made my life a whole lot easier so I could listen. And I really appreciate this amendment. Last year we had this conversation in GovOps, Senator Clarkson, you may remember. And I think at the end of the day, we're really going to have to get a handle on local law enforcement and efforts around the state to try and just build trust between communities and local law enforcement in a post cannabis legalization world. And I think this gets us further along. So I appreciate the amendment. I appreciate Senator Vyhovsky's work.
I agree. And we appreciated her work enough to incorporate some of it in the bill already. Yes. So this is a natural, this is a good addition. And I would entertain a motion to accept this amendment as presented.
So moved.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll call the roll. Senator Brock. We'll leave it open.
Coming?
He wasn't in finance this morning.
He wasn't?
No, so.
He was headed there.
Well,
He's in the building?
Yes.
I
Okay,
saw him.
doesn't matter. We're in the middle.
Senator-
As long as he's in the building, I'm not gonna worry about him.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Harrison is a yes. Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay,
Right, and
so
we'll leave it
it's
open
so
for a bit.
far 4-0.
Great. 401.
We'll leave it 4-0-1
One.
for now.
Missing in action is
Yes.
0-1. And then, thank you, Senator
And so then
Vyhovsky.
you'll report
Liberation.
it on the
I
floor.
will report it on the floor. Thank you
Perfect.
so much.
Thank you.
Great. Terrific. Thanks. And Mistress Childs, Counselor Childs, would you be kind enough to join us?
No, I think I might like Mistress Childs.
Well, I'm Mistress Clark. I
more interesting.
I use it all the time. Well, I didn't mean it that way. I meant it in the old fashioned way. You know me, I'm like,
Yeah.
You're
18th
double
century.
on tongue.
So,
Exactly.
This is one that you, no matter what you say, you're gonna dig yourself a deeper hole.
There we are. I'm in so many holes, I don't care.
No, I'm nobody's. Although, Bert's
No,
gonna be
no.
here tomorrow. We'll swing by and say hello.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
I'd love to. That's great.
Yeah, usually I'm down there on
So-
the weekends, but he's gonna come up here because I was like,
I'm so glad.
I can't go anywhere.
So, Counselor Childs,
Yes. So,
we have this technical amendment,
Yes.
which is, I
and it
believe,
is
in our
truly
little.
technical. So you'll recall that in your amendment, you established the new propagator license, like the
Yes.
nursery license.
Yeah.
And we just missed a couple little cross references. So like under current law, there's 6 types of licenses. Now you're adding a new, so there's going to be 7. So if you look at page 1 of the amendment, this is just amending section 8, which is already in the Senate Economic Development Amendment.
Right.
And so I've just,
The changes.
the
where-
changes are going to be, because I had to reproduce the language you already, included in there, is just like, if you look at line 11, it's just changing it from 6 to 7 types, adds the propagation license there as a
Oh.
reference, and then just fixes on page 2 a couple cross references, because now you have subdivisions 1A through F instead of 1A through E. And then on page 3, will you see the language that's struck for subsection H? That's already in your Senate Economic Development Amendment. And that was where you took out the existing language around access to records, and then you created that new section. And so the only changes are on pages 1 and 2, these little citation changes. Essentially, the change that shows on H is just because I had to replace the section.
Right.
Okay, so I thought there was something about the propagator license that made it different from the others, because we wanted people to be able to sell from one to the other. Or
That was in your,
So that's already
passed. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
We-
already, this is just literally
That's
because
why
you
it's
added a new one, I needed to say, oh, there's 7 licenses
Okay,
instead of 6
okay, so these are just
licenses.
things we
It's
missed.
really very just a.
Okay.
This is what we call a technical correction.
Yeah, okay.
It's called caught before it,
Before next year.
Oh, yeah, so we don't have to fix it next year.
and otherwise, we get to fix it in Senate GovOps as a technical correction, and we get to do a haiku about it.
Oh, gosh. So this is a way to avoid the haiku.
Well, maybe not to
I'm
avoid
sure you'll
all
have plenty of
that.
other fodder for that.
All right.
And I think this is great and it's well caught. I can't remember who caught it, but thank you to whoever caught it. Did you catch it?
No, it's been.
Yeah, that's right. I know somebody caught it. So thank you for catching. We always like to catch things before we actually embed them in statute. And I would recommend, I would entertain a motion to approve
Approve this amendment.
this technical correction in our bill H-270.
So moved.
Okay, so it's been moved. So all in favor, Senator Brock? Nope, not here yet. Senator
Allison, yes.
Clarkson, Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Senator Harrison's a yes, Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
All right, so we're 401 so far. We'll hold it open. See
Perfect.
if
We'll hold it
Senator
open
Brock-
until we,
So, correct.
I have a feeling he may be on the second floor.
I believe he is in the corner office.
And am I the person
Yes,
reporting it?
because you're the reporter of the bill for this
Okay.
committee. If you'd be kind enough to report both and respond to Tanya, you need to just respond to Tanya with the vote.
Oh,
You'll stand up and
that
say,
is
we
for-
entertained,
Got it,
we
okay.
heard from the sponsor of the amendment and we discussed it and we've approved it 4-0
And we do that after she,
after she speaks.
Okay.
You stand up right away after she speaks.
okay.
Counselor Childs, I just want to remind all of us that Mistress Quickly is one of the most important characters in Shakespeare's work. Mistress was a common honorary term for for a woman of stature in her community, married or not.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so I mean it in the most reverential
Thank you.
way and referring to one of my favorite playwrights who used it all the time, if you note in his work. So anyway, just have to correct the record here. It was not meant, it was meant only in an adulatory fashion. So I think that's great. And I think we're now going to pivot to S100.
Okay.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank
All right,
you.
we'll
And
see you on the floor.
sorry to have had whatchabadoozy Barnett Ted find you, but I wasn't sure we
No,
weren't going
that
to
was
have
good.
questions.
I had thought,
and-
I misjudged and I had checked in with people, like, are they gonna bring things up off the notice?
No,
Are they
it-
not? And it was like, no, they're not gonna do notice.
Given the
and-
changes we've done in this bill, I really felt that it needed another day in the House and we needed to get it to the House
Sure.
ASAP. So,
And I went over and well, I think you popped into committee yesterday, right, when we were going through it in GovOps.
No, I
Oh, you
didn't.
didn't? Oh, I thought maybe you did. Yeah, so GovOps has already gone through. They
I must have
obviously don't know
missed
about these, but I walked them through all the changes
I missed that.
yesterday.
somehow I missed that.
House-
Oh, House
House
Council.
GovOps.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, right. I was
Yeah.
on the floor when I was supposed to be there, but Pepper took care of it.
Yeah, everything was fine. So we walked them through all of the
Okay.
changes. So they already know what the underlying is. And then
Good.
I will send a copy of these over to Representative McCarthy, just so he knows about these are going to be on the floor today.
So what do we need, before you might stick for 1 second. Because Randy, hi, we have just voted and we held the vote open for you. So, we welcome back.
Thank you.
Had a little bit of exercise going upstairs, we assume. It's good to have you home
My
in
pleasure.
Senate Economic Development.
We
So-
didn't hold Miss Laney's tax up for you this, because it needed to go upstairs.
Notice it.
Okay, so we need to take these amendments upstairs too, right? The amendments, do we have to?
Since we don't have possession of the bill, I don't know if we have anything about it.
Okay,
Well, it would be for Wendy, you
So,
need
yeah.
to take it to Secretary Bloomer,
Okay,
and then
Clean
Tanya
copies
will
of it.
we'll
submit
take
hers.
hers. Okay.
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Right.
Okay, so we just have voted on 2 amendments to the cannabis bill, and we would
Okay.
love to have you weigh in if you would like.
All right.
That's-
The 2 amendments are Tanya Vihovsky
Okay.
has recommended that RDAP collect the data on the and collect the information and the data so that it can inform the cannabis, what's the fund called, the cannabis?
Control board?
Well, the
No,
kind
not
of-
the.
It's
Well-
Well,
business.
It's about who's gonna qualify as a social
Right.
equity applicant. And
Exactly.
who would be considered to be disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition in order to be able to receive technical assistance and funding. And so I think it's to kind of drill down and say, who is that in Vermont?
Who is that in Vermont currently living?
Right.
What has been the historic impact? What is the impact and who are the communities that would qualify for these grants?
And the study
It
is
sounds
already
like
in the
something-
bill,
The
but
study is in the bill.
the amendment specifies a different organization that already exists and is
Exactly.
willing to do that
And the
study.
organization is.
RDAP at the top, the Racial Disparities Council.
System Advisory Panel.
Yeah, they already exist. Aton in Putney
Uh-huh.
runs it, and they've done a lot of work.
Aton, what's his last name? It's-
I can't remember. Anyway, they exist. They've done good work. They've worked with the Criminal Justice Council. They've done work on our policing, on our, they've done a lot of work and worked closely with our Department of Public Safety and been a great partner on a number of issues.
And they already have a lot of this data.
Yeah, well,
Or they have a lot of
and I think
leads
they're
on data.
in the position to collect the data. And the whole point is we want data so that people can base decisions on who to give grants to.
And the CCB is happy that.
Say, I am not a fan of the whole issue of communities disproportionately impacted because frankly, it's meaningless. And, you know, what is a community that's disproportionately impacted, particularly when you talk about racial characteristics which in many cases did not exist to be able to be defined as a community 30, 40 years ago, because of just things like population change and the increase in people of color who have come since that time. Disproportionate impact, if you apply to people who've been convicted of crimes regarding that, I don't buy it for a second, quite frankly. So I'm not enthusiastic about this
Okay.
at all.
So do you want to vote against it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so our vote on that, if you take that, what, you're just gonna.
Will be
report that.
4-1-0.
410, right.
Okay.
The second
Again,
one,
I don't know this particular group, but I have sometimes I have an inherent suspicion about groups that are set up to do this because
They
always
existed
have an
for a long
agenda, which is in support of what it is they're doing, as opposed to an independent group that is looking at statistics and data independently. You know, there's a great book in the 1970s, How to Lie with Statistics. I see that used so often in these kinds of studies.
well, that's our job to weigh that when they come in.
Well, you weigh it, but so often we don't weigh it, you know, again, like weighing this group, we've had what, half an hour in this
20
committee to
minutes.
weigh this? Right, we've done a great job
Well,
of
but-
analyzing whether this is an truly independent group.
I did ask.
Oh, no,
what
but I've
happens
known
if
about
it
this.
Actually,
turned
we
out to
could
be
find out
college
more about
students.
that group.
No,
I did ask what happened if it turned out to be college students, because I haven't seen anyone,
Oh,
Oh,
sounds like
Beth is
bagpipes.
here.
that all the people that have been,
Out there.
What's,
that's bagpipes. Anyway, everybody that's been up on the Zoom screen testifying for this, in finance, remember they wanted more money going in here? None of them look like they belong to a minority, except maybe college students.
Well, I mean, those are the folks who came in here.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
Same-
you
the
recall,
same
it's the same issue. You know, it's a non-existent nonprofit group that, you know, has no records and no paper. It was totally non-existent group. Well, they're operating as a, you know, through a real nonprofit, related nonprofit, but no books, no records at all.
anyway,
As I say, I'm just real skeptical.
So,
bagpipes.
this is a
Did
group,
somebody die?
no, but it's probably devotionals. He's warming up for devotionals. It's probably Ben Partridge, Carolyn's son. He always plays.
They're playing it for the budget.
Oh, no.
So anyway, this is a group that's existed for quite a while. It works in conjunction with the Department of Public
I
Safety.
mean,
with-
yeah, but I
They're
mean,
the perfect group to do it.
I would say, I'd like to know a little bit more
Right,
about it,
so-
and I'm not gonna vote for it.
That's
Okay.
fine.
I don't
And
understand
that's fine,
it,
and
no,
you-
That's fine.
Right.
The second
Right.
amendment is a technical amendment,
Yeah.
which we just didn't catch, which is there needed to be, instead of adding the propagator license, we just needed to add 7 types and add it as the license. We
Probably
added it in
license.
some other places,
that's
but
fine.
It's
not.
just language
Yeah,
fix.
that's
Yes.
fine.
No, it's
Thank you.
technical things.
Mhm.
And,
Oh,
We could get away with it.
all
We call
right,
it a
technical
signature.
language.
yeah, but we can establish more.
Okay, so I'm putting it down as a yes vote on that.
Yeah.
So that is 500. Madam Chair.
Great, terrific. Thank you. And 410 on the other. And we just need to let Bloomer know as we go up. Thank you.
Okay.
And now we're going to pivot to S100.
Just a quick question on miscellaneous tax.
Yeah.
Is that going up?
It's gone up.
Without my card, that's fine.
Yeah,
No,
because I didn't know, I couldn't find you and
I
there
was,
was,
I was right next door to you in institutions.
Oh.
In there, at another meeting.
So Wendy, I'm gonna give you
Okay.
my cell number. So, we try as best we can to, when bills are coming up, but if they go off schedule, sometimes we won't realize them when we're listening. So
Right.
if you want to.
I will
just
text her.
Or somebody
Okay,
text
it's
me.
good to have it,
You
too.
know, I mean,
Okay.
I'll be listening if they're kind of
Thank
following
you.
the calendar, but
And
if
I
they're
should
kind
have
of
done
jumping
that, but we
around.
can't use, so if you
Right.
give it to me too, because I didn't have your tax
Right.
cell and I didn't, we can't use our phone or our
Right, sure, no, I
computer
get
on
it.
the floor.
It's just that, you
So
know, when
it
they're.
will come up and
Yeah,
I
it was
will.
interesting yesterday, but it.
Right, because they
it
went
worked
right
out.
in the middle of the
No, no.
notice calendar.
I knew it was
I
coming
know.
up. I knew it was coming up. And Ted, so I had to have Ted.
Right, and so if you know that they're gonna be doing whatever, you can also
Yeah.
just say, hey, listen out, they're gonna pull it up in the next hour or
Yeah.
something if it's.
I'm
not
gonna
going.
text you now so you have my number.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and if you would share that with
And I'll
yours,
put it, I'll do.
if you'd share it with me, that would be
Okay.
great. Okay, Ellen, come join us. I just have to see if it's Ben Partridge.
I can, well,
Is he there?
I can see right here, but also former Representative Partridge walked by a moment
I
ago.
know.
Oh.
it's a good sign.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean Ben, it doesn't mean Ben doesn't come.
Well, I mean, it feels
Well, it'd
like
be a
it's
heck
good
of a coincidence.
Because
Yeah.
he's like diagonal from here.
That's funny.
Oh, he's out in the parking lot?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. He's there. Oh, yeah, there he is. It's great. Oh, we'll see who he is. It sounds great. Oh, I feel like I'm. You know, it's great.
There's a gentleman in this area that makes bagpipes, people all over the world.
Really?
And in Windsor too. Ian Anyway, we're going to turn to S100 and we are just going to look at, because have we checked it's not on the notice calendar at all? So maybe it will be being dealt with tomorrow, but we also may be asked to bring it up off pending notice on the notice, pending inclusion on the notice calendar. So let's just go through some of the high level changes. And I think that's the short sheet that Ellen has very kindly done for the entire bill for all the counselors who are otherwise flat out and frantic. Maybe the 2 Fs, flat out and frantic. For Damien and David, they're all working like overtime right now. So-
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. Yes, so today on your website, you have both the summary chart, this is the high level. You do also have the full 60-page side-by-side, which is the entire bill.
Which is fabulous.
Yay.
Thank you. This is super helpful. And I know it was a lot of work, but thank you. And it looks like there are more changes than there actually probably are, but okay. So let's go through them and we will figure out what the pleasure is of the pro tem but great.
In the summary chart, I did highlight what has changed from the
Right.
Couch's version.
I know, as I began to go through it, I noticed that,
Yeah.
which is really helpful.
The summary chart is the smaller.
Yeah. So should we just go through them and maybe we can add some more lay language on some of it if we need to, because we're gonna have to report this.
Sure. Sure, so in section 1, that's the parking section, you will recall, you had just proposed 1 parking space per dwelling unit unless there was limited parking nearby, so it could be 1.5. The House made some changes to this, which is that in residential districts with sewer and water, you can't require more than 1 parking space. In areas without sewer and water, it can, for multi-unit dwellings, it can be 1.5 parking spaces.
What has sewer and water got to do with parking?
Runoff, I think, runoff.
I think it has to do with the amount of buildings, amount of units that you can put on it, but.
All right.
Or both, I think, but both, because
I don't know.
But that would be the logic to me.
So, yeah, I mean, it's the same, sort of proxy language that you had created for other sections, so they're using it here as well.
okay.
In section 2, there's only a couple of small changes. So for duplexes, it's the municipality must allow duplexes, which you did pass. In the houses changes to this though, our municipalities must permit multi-unit dwellings with up to 4 units, unless the town requires more. As an aside, yesterday the state of Washington signed this language into law with duplexes and fourplexes. It's very similar. It has a couple of differences because they base it on the size of the population of the town. In some parts of Washington, they're now requiring 6plexes. So,
Wow.
Requiring it.
Yeah, that's
the
serious.
town to allow.
In
It's
like
a similar
Seattle.
structure.
Okay.
But they're sort of.
Oh, the town is allowed to
Yeah.
require it.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild that you said a minimum density.
No. It's the same structure as yours in that a town is required to allow 6plexes.
Oh, okay,
Not
allow
build,
the owner
yes.
to have that.
Yes.
It's not- Okay.
Yeah, so the change here is that they did make a change to the unless the town requires more units. So specifically, St. Albans has adopted zoning where in order to build multi-unit dwellings, you need to be building at least 10 units per structure, per project. And so they don't want to go to the 4 unit dwelling language. And so this language addresses their situation where if they've provided for areas with more unit requirements, they don't have to do the fourplexing.
They can do more. The towns can require more.
Yes,
That's pretty wild. So in St. Albans, if you're doing multifamily, you have to do at least 10 units?
yes,
Wow.
yeah,
Hmm.
yes.
Yeah, if we increased it to 25 units, we get a lot more housing.
Yeah, you would.
I think there are trade-offs to this language. I
Oh,
think
I'm
it's
sure there are.
Yeah.
pros and cons to it, but the other change they made in this section is about the density bonus. So the language that you passed about the
Right.
density bonus for affordable housing was that they could add additional 40% additional units and then use an additional floor for those units. However, they have restructured it so that they may add an additional floor for those units, or they can just fit them in the existing structure if they don't want to increase the height of the building.
So it may add an additional floor.
They may add an affordable housing development may exceed the density by 40%,
Right, I hear it.
and then they may do that with an additional floor, or they may do it in a different structure.
Or it doesn't have to be adjoining.
Well, yeah, it does. But it could just be a different layout, so it doesn't necessarily have to be building up an additional floor if they don't want to.
If they want to do an additional floor but not increase the units, could they do that?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry, Keisha.
Oh, no, I had a related question, but can a community or a town stop them from doing an additional floor? I'm just curious. I don't think we're going to change the bill at this point, but
No.
okay.
No, it says
So
they-
it just gives them more
if a
choice.
developer wants to- Yes, if a developer wants to, they shall be allowed to build an additional floor, but they don't have to. So it's providing flexibility for the developer.
Great. Love it. Okay.
So the next change is in the definition section. These aren't really changes, but they added the definition of accessory dwelling unit, which is the same as it was previously, and they also moved the definition of served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure here. So it's, and then within that, they made, as you may recall, one change. They swapped out one of the criteria for a different one. And so they removed the language about small systems being allowed to be excluded, and they replaced it with areas that have been designated in either a planned unit development or a transfer of rights that prohibit year-round development. Part of the thinking on that at least was that there's already multiple places in this definition where systems with constraints are allowed to be excluded. And so House felt that a small system would fall under that exclusion if it was a constrained system. So next in section 5, in the report back to the department on what towns need to provide when they update their bylaws, they have to include a confirmation that the zoning bylaws and GIS data have been uploaded to the state database.
Don't let me report that one. I mean, no comment, because I have my same concern that I've always had.
Section 6 is where another bigger change happened. The language in the appeals section on who is allowed to have standing under these provisions, they went back to 10 people within the town. And I will say that they actually did make one change, which is any 10 voters, if they added residents. And so it's a combination of voters and property owners is how the statute is currently. But they did also add residents. And so, and then they did also include the prohibition against appealing character of the area in affordable housing development.
Can I ask just a quick question?
Yeah.
So is residence a big deal? Because it does open it up to people who are not voters. I mean, I would hope that all residents would be voters.
So,
But they aren't.
Right.
Well, it leaves it open to a 12-year-old kid.
so I will,
Oh my God.
I will say,
So we
lot of
define
voters.
this, don't we?
Oh my God.
Is this in one of our definitions?
No.
Okay,
So I will say that generally the court rules will kick in at some point, and I'm not sure that a 12-year-old has standing in the realm of capacity to sue a town. So the Office of Racial Equity raised this as a concern that they wanted to see addressed because it would address non-citizen residents
Okay.
so,
who
sorry.
may not be voters and they may not own property owners. They may in fact be renters who are not allowed to vote.
So I've now lost you and I
We're on
apologize. I
section
had,
6.
yeah, we're still in section 6, okay.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sorry, I think
I
the
don't-
language is actually wrong in section 6, but
so
If you look at-
are we working on the summary?
I'm
Yeah.
working on both.
Okay, because the residence is obviously not in the summary, so
Sorry.
I'm just curious.
It's on page 9 of the more detailed one.
Page 8, page 9, okay. And they've added residents here, so any 10 persons or property owners, and this says,
But if I'm a renter, but I can't be bothered to register to vote, I mean, a resident, if they're saying they want to include renters who aren't property owners, but they can be voters. So why are we, if you can't be bothered to do your civic duty to register to vote, then why are we giving you a
there
pass?
is a good, interesting
I
question.
think this is for people who aren't able to vote.
legally barred from
This,
voting.
this is
Like
for
people who are not
residents.
citizens yet.
This is what we've done with voting
Okay.
in local elections.
And in Montpelier.
I didn't vote for
Okay.
it.
Okay,
No, I again am looking at this and saying, these amendments are taking more from towns and they're giving them nothing. All of it takes power and control from the towns. It tells them what they shall do, and it is giving them less that they have any control over. And unless they've made some real changes to Act 250, then we are forcing towns to pack larger numbers of people into their downtown areas. Many of them will be people with issues, and we are giving the towns nothing. We have somehow declared the towns as the enemy in this, and I don't think that's healthy.
Well, I don't think that's fully fair either, because we are giving the towns the opportunity for other places in this bill, opportunities for financing, opportunities for better place, some lovely development in downtowns and pocket parks and all sorts of other things, but also we're giving them more
Redemption centers
taxpayers.
now.
We're also giving them more taxpayers. So hopefully we're improving their base. Hopefully but I think just given we have 4 minutes before we have to be on the floor, we should maybe keep cruising, because we're going to clearly have to keep cruising. One of the questions is whether this will be taken up off the notice calendar, pending entrance to the notice calendar today or not. If that is the desire of the pro tem to do that today and move it along because of the concerns Keisha has raised, which is what I think the objective here is, to concur and just send it straight to the governor. The challenge right now is understanding it enough to be able to concur, and if people are willing to concur. So those are the 2 questions. So we need to keep moving a tiny bit to get us. We have a lot more here, but so noted. So noted.
Section 7 and 8 have small changes in them. This is about subdivision plat review, and so the House added the words major and minor, and so a major subdivision plat requires a public hearing. A minor subdivision plat can be approved by the zoning administrator and therefore would not need a hearing. It's similar to your language. Your language just didn't use the words major and minor.
Right.
Sections 9, 10, 11, and 12 do not have any changes in them. Section 12 does have a couple of sort of word changes, but it doesn't change the substance that town plans are required to have additional details in their housing element.
Okay.
Section 13 is new. It strikes the reference to rural towns having a different ability to adopt bylaw changes by Australian ballot. It leaves intact the general authority for any town to choose an Australian ballot, but there was this existing provision that rural towns could choose to forever have every zoning change be on the Australian ballot. Now the default language is that they can just choose per ballot, per decision, they can put it to the vote.
Per issue, they can choose.
Yeah.
Which way they want to vote.
Yeah. The primary.
That's good for towns.
The default is, yeah, so there was concern that putting the zoning changes to Australian ballot can lead to the work of the planning commission being overrode by the citizens in an Australian ballot. Section 14 allows the department to use up to 20% of the municipal planning funds to provide assistance to towns seeking the neighborhood development area designation.
So the department would use it for their own, the department would get.
It says in the actual language that they can hire a put on retainer a consultant to assist. But yes, currently the department assists any towns seeking a designation under the state designation program. And they have testified that right now there's a long wait list for towns wanting to get the neighborhood designation. And so this would help them have funding to assist them more quickly.
But we're funding the state department as well, instead of just funding the municipalities to get.
This is where I think they're wanting to sort of focus some of the use on our updating of our municipal bylaws to help with this crowd. Is that it?
So some of that will be part of it. It's to provide technical assistance to towns who are trying to apply for the neighborhood development area.
But
that would include assisting them with bylaw updates.
Yeah, but this municipal planning funds.
Mm-hmm.
This is for bylaw modernization, I believe, and
so it includes bylaw modernization, but the municipal planning funds can be used for any aspect of town planning and zoning projects.
okay. So this is
We are
Yep,
We gotta go.
Floor here, we've gotta go.
Yeah.
and we're only now just being called. We didn't
No,
have a
call.
bait.
I think there was a call.
Oh, they did? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
call.
Forgive me, Ellen, I'm sorry. We need to continue, we'll need to continue, and I don't know.
You may want to ask the pro tem or the.
I am going to
secretary.
ask right now what our scoop is.
Are we
Thank you.
going? Are we like?
We're going right now.
Yes, we are.
And I have called and talked to my last person.
Good.